Hey, Fed heads, welcome back to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. Tonight we're going to be smoking let's see if my fancy new lighting will get a decent focus there. I had it before. But anyway, we're going to be
There it
smoking
is.
the Arturo Fuente Don Carlos Eye of the Shark. You can kind of see that box press there. So grab a cigar, grab a drink, and get ready to hang out with us. All right, guys, we're back. My name's Tripp. We're here with Sharing Our Pairings, broadcast around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, live on Facebook, available on the old YouTubes, and, of course, on whatever your favorite podcast catcher is. Here once again, finally back from the
Back
depths
from the
of
dead.
nowhere land, is my faithful co-host, Dennis. Dennis, how you doing tonight?
What's up, Trippy? Man, it feels good to be back. I'm finally smoking cigars. I can smell things. I can taste things. I feel like I'm alive, which is awesome. And I'm just pumped because we're smoking, to come back to smoking cigars and smoke this cigar. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're smoking something a little special tonight. If you missed the intro and you're just tuning in, we're smoking the Eye of the Shark from Arturo Fuente. As I feel like probably everybody watching has to know, this was named the #1 cigar of the year by Cigar Aficionado in 2017. I think it's a pretty good cigar. I'm not sure if it was my favorite one of the year, but taste is subjective. If you've never heard of the cigar, first of all, it's got a weird shape. If you're unfamiliar, it is a torpedo at the head, which is round, and then it kind of tapers into a square shape where it's box pressed for the rest of the cigar. This comes from the Añejo Shark, which has always been kind of the most popular vitola of that cigar. This one is reportedly a little bit smaller. The ring gauge doesn't feel much smaller. I think what it is the regular Shark has kind of a flare where it's like a pyramid where the foot is actually a little bigger than like the body up here. And this one is just kind of like flat-sided, as you can see. It's definitely a little bit shorter. This is a 5 5/3 by 52 instead of the 5 5/8 by 54. This is a variation of the Don Carlos blend, which is a Cameroon wrapper. I don't think they give out much else. This was done for the 30th anniversary. The MSRP is around $16.95, I think. And if you can find them, that is. I mean, I've seen shops selling them. Like, it happens every single year. We've talked about it before. Every year, whatever is the #1 like doubles in price, and you can't find it anywhere because it's back ordered by everyone in the world. And this is no exception. Even though it's a pretty expensive cigar, I've seen them going for about $25 to $50 in some places. And that's again when you can find them. Wow, apparently the MSRP is $11.25.
Really?
I've never seen them lower than $15.
Man, New York, probably New York. Maybe I've seen for like 18, 19, and that's being really nice about it. Probably much more than that.
It's kind of got that typical Don Carlos blend, but there's something else there that like I feel like it's sweeter than the regular Don Carlos. Is that just me? What do you think about the flavor, Dennis?
It's sweet, but I'm getting this like funky floral note out of it too.
I get a little bit of that. I know what you mean, and then there's like a dryness on the tongue that reminds me of walnuts that we were talking about before.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a noticeable difference in it.
Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of salt. I'm not sure if, like, I guess you could say salted walnut, but I mean, I don't know if they're even the same flavor that go together.
Talking about nuts, I don't know. I think walnuts for sure. Pecans, however
Pecans.
you
Pecans
folks
is how
out there like to say it. Pecans. Some people like pecans. They're all about the same.
Pecans.
Yeah, but getting some of that pecan note.
Yeah, I definitely get a little bit of that. There's a little bit of like just a hint of citrus. I feel like lately I go through these weird phases where my palate is way more attuned to citrus. where for a while I'll barely taste it, and then suddenly everything I get varying amounts of citrus. Like this one reminds me of like an orange, I guess. It's very subtle though. Like it's just like the sourness of a citrus, nothing else. Like kind of like if you lick the outside of a sour candy. I don't know.
Oh, you get just a little bit of that bite. Yep, I know exactly what you mean.
Like a little bit of that twang to it.
Twang, that's a good way to put it.
A thing that's always weirded me out about this cigar. There have been several releases of it, and they've done some changes to the bands over time, and I feel like they never quite get it right. Like I don't think it'll show up on camera. It'll almost show up on camera.
Where it sticks out?
Yeah, like it's not flat.
Yeah.
Like the bands aren't quite shaped right. The original run, I ended up like as soon as I heard about it, I just happened to see it in a shop and was like, oh, okay, I got to try that because people were saying it's amazing. This was like in 2015, maybe 2016. On the back of the band, rather than having this nice little like Arturo Fuente crest, or I guess it's a Carlos Fuente crest, rather than having that, it was kind of a regular Don Carlos band, and they put a piece of ribbon like up against the tobacco and then roll the band around and then put tape over. So the tape is holding the ribbon there, but the ribbon's really just there so the tape doesn't touch the wrapper because there's this big gap in the back between the like where the seam is, because I guess they didn't have big enough Don Carlos bands. And then they went to a different version. I don't remember what. Oh, the weird thing about that one is that like the back was angled like that where they met. And then now they've got this one which fits pretty well, but it just feels like it's too high up.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a straight band that's on a kind of rounded cigar. Like it reminds me of sometimes when you get like a double perfecto kind of shape, and then you have a big band on there, so it kind of sticks off of the flat part. It's really weird, but you know.
It's a nice band. That being said, it's a pretty cool band, and Fuente in general has that classic look to it too, which is very nice.
Yeah, it really does. They've got some classy looking bands, but I mean, a lot of people complain about their bands. You know, the complaint that I have right now is just that over the last couple of years, I feel like they've made a lot of changes to the Don Carlos band. So I have a really hard time telling the difference between some of the Don Carlos.
It kills me. You need like a Pokédex to figure out what all the Fuente cigars are. Like, come on.
That's the best way to put it that I've heard. You need a Pokédex to figure out which version of which cigar you're smoking. And you know, as Fuente does, they've got all these little variants and stuff like that. But anyway, so they don't release. I did some research while we were talking. They do not release any of the details on the blend. We could probably assume it's Cameroon. It tastes like Cameroon, and pretty much every Don Carlos ever has had Cameroon. So I think it's a Cameroon wrapper, but they won't confirm.
And made in Dominican Republic.
Dominican Republic
as well, yeah.
So let's talk about our pairings a little bit. So for my pairings, I got an interesting variety of whiskeys, or of spirits rather. So the first one that I've got is a little thing that also comes from the Dominican Republic. I just wanted to have something from Dominican, and this was the only thing that I had from there. So this is Debonaire's Very Special Reserve Fine Aged Rum. There's not a lot of information about it because it's not available in the U.S., so there's not a lot of marketing for it. It is an 8-year aged Solera rum. If you're not familiar with Solera, it means that they basically age it in barrels, and then they take all of the spirits out of that barrel and put some of it into a new barrel. So what ends up happening is they're always adding spirits and taking spirits out, but there's never really a definitive age on what it is. So I think with Solera, 8 is kind of an average of how old it is. I'm not 100% sure on how age statements on Solera work. I'll have to do a little bit of research on that and talk about it next time I have him on the show. It's a I don't know what the word for it is, but it's like it's not export strength. I don't know what the opposite of export strength is, but it's only 38% ABV, which is a little bit low, but it's because in most tropical countries, the spirits, particularly rum, are going to be somewhere between 34 and 38. I think it's mostly because, one, not to disparage anybody, but people in those countries can't necessarily handle their liquor as well. That's what I've heard.
Heat, right?
I don't know about that, but I think it's really about the heat, because that way, like, I think it might be partially for locals, but partially for like vacationers. Because like when I'm on vacation, I'm drinking 9 rum and cokes on the beach side.
Dude.
I don't want to be wasted by the time it's time to go back to the hotel. I want to be able to sit there and sip on my coconut or whatever I've got. So I'm gonna take a couple sips of this, see how it pairs up. What's your first pairing, Des?
I decided to go today with beer. I thought about doing some whiskeys, but maybe on the next show I'll focus on some Scotch. But I have a beer that I've discovered recently, but I think it's been out for a little bit, and my first sip of it kind of confirmed that. And it's actually from Bolero Snort, New Jersey. For those of you that don't know, this is in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. And they make a lot of cool stuff. And this is their Bully Juice, which is a fun label. Got a little Beetlejuice action going on.
I've never had one of their beers, but I love their labels.
I love all their labels. They're really cool. And this is a double IPA. I wanted to start strong, coming back to it. So it's 8.1%, which is pretty, average for a double IPA. The cool thing about this, though,
that's kind of like, that's barely a double IPA in my book.
Yeah, it's funny how the bar just keeps going higher and higher.
I mean, that's like a double IPA for me is like 8.5, maybe 9%. Like I can go to any bar in town and get an IPA that's 7.8%.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, same for me.
So 8.1 is like just barely a double.
Yeah, it's crazy. And at this rate, probably people are going to start sessioning barley wines pretty soon.
Yeah.
Which is nuts. But this beer is kind of cool for a particular reason. They have some weird hops in there. Mosaic and Galaxy, everybody knows, everybody loves. But they have a hop called Denali, which is kind of You've heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So for those of you that don't know what it is, it was an experimental hop before, and I think now it's more of a regular release. Used to be called Hoppensteiner, and it's just really insanely tropical, like heavy pineapple, citrus pine, kind of this weird spice that you get from like a really oily hop. And I think some people actually even they used to call it Nutzilla or Nuggetzilla.
Oh, because it's like a nugget but more intense?
Yeah, it's basically a mix of like Nugget and maybe El Dorado or Warrior. But the hop itself it's huge. It's just this most ridiculous looking, like juiced up looking hop. It's awesome. Nice. And the beer looks good too. It looks good. The only thing I would say after my first sip, I've realized this. Unfortunately, it is not fresh.
That's always a bummer with IPAs. Like, there's a lot of beers that can get away with it.
Definitely, and especially with something that has this high of a hop oil profile. Something like Denali, you need to drink it fresh, and that's it. It has to be within a week. At least, I mean, in my opinion, I think for a week. But it degrades so quickly. And this one, unfortunately, I think it sat on the shelf for so long that it basically has turned into a malt bomb.
That's unfortunate.
But some redeeming qualities. But
as we've said before, even if a beer is old and out of its prime, way out of its prime, it can still be good. It's just not the same thing that they made.
Yes. So, that's actually even more impressive. If a brewery can release a beer that's still good, a couple weeks, couple months after the release, especially something that's really resinous, I think that's awesome in my book. And so it's not bad by any means. Profile's a little bit different, not what I expected, but I kind of like it. So I'm going to see how it goes. I'll let it kind of warm up a little bit and see how it tastes later on.
Yeah, sometimes with malt bomb kind of stuff, it helps to be a little bit warmer. IPAs are generally better crisp, but I mean,
Yeah.
if it's super malty, it's generally better a little bit warmer. So the Debonair rum, I feel like this is like a perfect pairing. This thing goes so well with Cameroon. It's sweet and it's more oily than most rums. Like, you know that like oily Scotch feel you get where it kind of coats your tongue a little bit? I get way more of that from this than I remember getting from any other rum. And shout out to Evan, who's watching, for suggesting this whole lighting trick thing. It's working out, as you can see. But anyway, there's still, every time I've had this rum, there's a flavor that I cannot figure out. And I don't know what it is.
Oh,
it
yeah.
reminds me a little bit of like a sweet cedar or something, like woody, but not in the normal way that a rum would be woody. Like, it's not woody like a old bourbon or an old Scotch. It's a different kind of woodiness that I try to figure it out every time and I can't do it.
I've always felt that I've kind of leaned more toward like a maple syrup, like an unrefined maple syrup.
Yeah, that might be what it is.
It's really hard to place. I know exactly what you mean, and I've gone through pretty much the whole bottle trying to figure it out for science.
Yeah, it's mapley. That's what it is. It's got a little bit of that maple kick to it. You're right. I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to thank our sponsor, the Cigar Federation store. They just got a bunch of warped stuff in. They got a bunch of warped samplers and stuff like that. I mean, you can't go wrong with warped. I mean, if you haven't had warped, what are you doing? I think they make some of the most Cuban-esque cigars, I guess is the word. They kind of focus on the more medium-bodied, kind of more elegant smoking experience. So a lot of people who are into like Romacrafts, the La Flor Dominicanas, the super heavy, thick tobaccos, aren't a huge fan of it. But if you like a really well-rounded cigar, warped is where it's at. So go check out the Cigar Federation store. And don't forget, if you join on cigarfederation.com, you can get a 10% off coupon that works on every single order you place, except if you have another coupon, like if they're running a deal or something, because you can't stack coupons over there. But click in the top right-hand corner on the store tab, and you'll have a link there once you've signed into cigarfederation.com. All right, how's that Bolero snort going? I get their names mixed up because they go crazy with them.
Everybody has these wild names, you know. Obviously, if you can't tell by now, they have a bull thing going on. That's their theme.
Oh yeah.
All their beers are bull related, right? You know what? I've actually had this sitting out for the last maybe hour, and it's warmed up a lot. So when I first poured it, it was already starting to get to that point where it's kind of ready. Biggest thing is, yes, it's malty, but it's actually very sweet. Maybe almost too sweet, but it is going really well with the Cameroon now that I'm doing my usual and kind of smoking really quick. As the cigar's heating up, it's playing well with the sweetness of the beer.
And what do you think of the cigar at this point? I'm trying to figure out the retrohale. There's a floral note on the retrohale, but there's something else I can't figure out. And there's a little bit of, I mean, we have to say for the spice heads out there, there's a little bit of spice in this. There's not a lot. Yeah. It's not going to bowl you over. I think it's spicier than most of the Don Carlos stuff, because I feel like a lot of the Cameroon, like pretty much all the Cameroon wrapped Fuentes that I know of are just not real heavy in the spice department. This kicks it up a little bit. This is closer to an Opus X, but it's not as spicy as something like that.
Oh yeah, definitely not. But it's nice. It's pronounced in a way that doesn't overpower anything else.
Yeah.
So it's accessible, which is really, really important.
Yeah, it actually. So I was just talking about Warped and how they've got like that really elegant, very intricate flavors, and that's kind of how this is. That's what this reminds me of. It's very middle of the road, medium bodied, but it's got flavors that really jump out. And layers of flavors. Like I just while I was talking, I got like a ton of peanut butter on the finish.
Peanut butter?
Like a ton of peanut butter. Like I still taste it. Like it tastes like I just had a spoonful of peanut butter. Gerard Shelley says we need a Canadian to taste this whiskey or this rum to tell us whether it's maple or not, because Canadians got that on lock.
Oh, absolutely. I think we call the surgeon.
Yeah, exactly.
An emergency.
We'll have to see if we can bring him a nip in Vegas.
Oh, for sure.
Make sure he tries it. So I'm going to move on to my second selection here. I'm really excited to talk about this one, and very excited to taste it again because, well, I'll talk about that in a second. So this is from Bull Run Distilling. It's in this cute little bottle that's way smaller than my head. Like, here it is next to a regular bottle. It's tiny. It's a half a bottle. They have these in full bottles, but I figured I would try the half bottle because you don't save any money by buying a full bottle. 2 of these are the same price. So this is from Bull Run Distilling. They were founded in 2010 by a guy named Lee Meadoff. And he used to work for a distillery downtown Portland called House Spirits Distilling. I think he helped start them in 2004, actually. I don't have it in my notes, but I believe he did. Or at least he worked there since 2004. So this whiskey is their Oregon single malt whiskey, aged 4 years. And the interesting thing about it being a single malt is, unlike most single malts, they weren't going after a Scotch profile. For this, they were inspired more by the fact that so much beer is made around here, using 100% malted barley, that they wanted to see how that kind of thing would work out with a whiskey. So they don't actually create the wash for this, which is like it's kind of like the wort with beer. You basically make this really sweet. They call it liquor. But it has no alcohol whatsoever. It's just really sweet water that's sweetened by all the barley, and then you ferment that to turn it into beer, or you ferment and then distill that to turn it into whiskey, or not necessarily whiskey, but spirit. They aren't actually making the wash for this. They're having it made for them at Burnside Brewing in downtown Portland.
Huh.
So Burnside takes 100% malted barley from the Klamath Basin, which is in southern Oregon, and it spills over a little bit into northern California. They actually make the wash, then transport it to the distillery where they ferment it with ale yeast, 100% ale yeast. Then they distill it and barrel age it for 4 years in New American oak. One thing I wish that they had done that they don't specify, but I really doubt it, is age this in Oregon oak. I think that would be really cool. Maybe it's something they're working on. So I actually bought this at the farmer's market this weekend. So in Oregon, and there's a couple other states where they do this, where you can actually get a liquor license that allows you to sell direct to consumer at a farmer's market. And they said that there's a variant of this that I didn't buy, but they age it in some kind of wine barrel. I don't remember. It was some wine style that I had never heard of. But that's like a farmer's market exclusive whiskey that you can buy, which is really cool.
That sounds awesome.
And I noticed while I was getting ready for the show, this is batch number 2, bottle number 41. So that's like a low number, man.
That's pretty special. That's awesome. That is very awesome. And
I just kind of like their understated label. It's like not too flashy.
Very clean.
This clocks in at 44.85% ABV, which is 89.7 proof. They got real specific with that. I'm going to take a couple sips of this and see what I think. I'm looking forward to it.
It looks wonderful, man.
I mean, I've only had it out of a plastic shot glass at a farmer's market at 11 a.m., so I'm excited to try it again.
Dude, those are always the best. I have found from farmers markets, I found like barrel-aged gins, very small production stuff that is just killer. And the same kind of very small bottle, even like those mini flasks, the glass, like the bootleggers flask glasses. Those are really nice too, and it's just cool. You go to a farmer's market, you get some vegetables, you get some meat, you buy some whiskey.
They had a couple interesting things. There was also, I didn't buy them just because I'm not like, I mean, anybody who watches the show probably knows I drink a lot of beer and a lot of spirits, but I'm just not really into cocktails. Like a cocktail for me is either a gin and tonic or a Manhattan. That's about as crazy as I get with cocktails because everything is too sweet for me. But they had one booth where they sell canned cocktails. So you can get like one of them was some blood orange and vodka and lime or something like that. And the other one was a Moscow Mule, but it comes in a 12-ounce can. And you just buy a 6-pack of them.
That's pretty cool, actually.
You could just drink cocktails right out of the can, which is, I mean, not my gig, but it's cool.
It's definitely very interesting. I've been on a kick for canned wine.
See, I can get behind canned wine. I like wine a lot. I just I don't like cocktails enough to buy a cocktail that I can transport somewhere. I'd rather just make it.
6-pack of Cosmos.
And see, Evan Kirshner says an old fashioned with no sugar is amazing. They are. Yeah, I don't like old fashions because they're too sweet for me. Like, I know people who love them. I know Juan loves them, but for me,
smoke in that.
Yeah,
a smoky old fashioned is
actually. I mean, this is completely off topic, but when I was in Dallas for the whiskey launch party for Ezra Zion for the whiskey that they're partners in, which is Oak and Eden. I was like,
Eden,
Odin and something. What?
Odin.
That doesn't sound right. Oak and Eden. I almost said Eek and Odin again. They had a bar that we went to afterwards, where like the after party was, and they had a smoked Manhattan, I think it was, which was really good. Like, that was my jam. But anyway, I'm going to take a couple sips of this while you talk about your next pairing.
I just took a sip of my next pairing, and I'm like, man, this tastes really different than what I've had. I've had a couple over the last few days. Man, it tastes so different. It's crazy. So my next pairing comes from New Jersey, of course, another Jersey beer, and I think it's really important to highlight this because these guys make insane stuff. They're wild. Everything they make is pretty wild.
I know exactly where it's coming from already.
Oh, you know. Oh, yeah. Dude, this is the latest release from Cardin, released this past Saturday, called Delight, which is a collaboration project. It's Lacked Oat, yeah. And it's a collaboration project with another New Jersey brewery called Magnify. And Magnify is kind of known for making these really cool, basically like breakfasty inspired double IPAs. They have one they recently released, which was a strawberry shortcake, or strawberry short stack, sorry. So like strawberry pancakes.
Ooh,
kind of.
Yeah.
They have got the game down when it comes to marshmallow-based anything. So like those kind of lactose IPAs, they do phenomenal stuff. And they're pretty small too. And so they paired up with Cardin, and they released this beer. And it's a really weird beer. It's a double IPA, 8%. But the way that they made it was kind of funky. They essentially took the hops they used were pretty standard. They used Citra, Eldorado, Mosaic hops, all the good stuff. But then they made this like homemade sour cherry fluff with pistachio and rose water.
That sounds great.
So like rose water, I don't know if it comes out in that, but just the concept of making this giant mushy sour cherry thing and throwing it into a beer to see what happens, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's pretty hazy, pretty nice and cloudy in there. And dude, it's insane because I've had this very cold over the last couple of days. I've had a few, and it was a totally different profile than now. Now it's like pineapple upside down cake. It's insane. Unfortunately, there's no sour cherry. Pistachio is kind of hard to get. Rose water, I'm not even sure if you could ever probably get that flavor out, but it's cool that they did it.
I mean, rose water is hard to taste in literally anything.
I mean, even drinking it in the glass, if you really wanted to sip on it, like, it's a very subtle flavor.
It's more about the nose than anything, and it gets covered up so easily. Yeah. But it's a lot like floral notes in cigars. Like, a lot of times, floral notes can get blown away by just about anything. So it's kind of rare, even if there are floral notes in a cigar, it's kind of rare that you actually taste or experience them.
Oh, absolutely. For this though, I have to say honestly, it's a really well balanced IPA. Probably my favorite beer from them, and likely the best IPA they've ever released.
Wow.
Which I'm sure some people will disagree, but the lactose is really well balanced. It's not overpowering. It's not. It doesn't feel like a beer that would be part of this recent hazy revolution that we've had, where everyone's just throwing lactose into IPAs, making super hazy stuff, and just calling it a day. This really stands out on its own. I think it's pretty cool.
Awesome. I want to try that now. That sounds good.
Well, I bought a case, so you can have
some. This cigar is getting more intense as it goes along, which is, it's interesting because that used to be the case with pretty much all cigars. And then as Nicaraguan cigars became more popular, it's now way more common to get to start with a blast of pepper and then slowly fade from there. But this cigar, the spice and the sweetness and that sour orange that I was getting before are really ramping up. The sweetness is almost candy, hard candy sweet to me.
I'm trying to pick out.
Or is your experience different?
I'm trying to pick out the flavors. The sweetness definitely comes out, but I also think the beer has an effect on that too. So I don't want to call it out too much. But the citrus that you mentioned before, that subtle citrus for me is really coming out. The only other thing I would say, unrelated to the cigar necessarily itself, but going back to the band, I'm holding this, right? And it's that weird gap is just crinkling under my fingers, and it feels funky.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
I want to take it off.
I'm so confused by it.
Yeah, it's confusing. You're
right. But anyway, this Oregon single malt is good and different. It does remind, it is a little bit reminiscent of I'm trying to think of some Scotch to compare it to that I can think of off the top of my head, the core of Highland Park without the peatiness.
Oh yeah,
reminds me a little bit of this, where it's kind of sweet and almost meaty, and kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the words to describe it. It's interesting because it doesn't smell like most single malt Scotches, but then on the palate, it starts off a little sweeter than most Scotches, and a little more, I guess, robust. It's just got a more robust flavor than a Scotch that would usually have an equivalent level of sweetness. Scotch tends to be usually, not always, 100% not always, Scotch is usually a little bit lighter than this. There are a lot of heavier Scotches out there, which would compare better to this. I just can't think of any off the top of my head other than Highland Park, and that's just because I had it the other day. But that's peated, and this doesn't have any of the peat, but it's got a little bit of that sweet, almost meaty substance to it. And I think it pairs with the cigar really well. I think it's bringing out some spice. I think that's what's bringing out some of the sweetness that I'm getting.
That spice is really incredible because although it's really subtle, it's very obviously there.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does cut into the sweetness in a really nice way. And I was just going to say, for me, I'm going to go off the rails a little bit and say the first thing that I think of right now is basically a piece of toast, burnt toast with marmalade or marmalade.
Okay, that checks out for me. The burnt toast was one of the flavors that I was trying to figure out, and it's 100% there. I'm trying to think of a more specific note. It reminds me of a southern style biscuit that was overcooked. It's got a little bit of that burnt toast, or you made biscuits and the next day you put one in the toaster. Because it's definitely got that caramelized bread kind of quality to it.
Sweetness to it, yeah, too.
But then it's got more of that dense breadiness than a regular piece of toast would have.
And this is a really funny thing. A lot of times we talk about cigars, we talk about flavors, and it's so subjective. We always compare it to things that we know, and that's fine. That's always great, and everyone does that. And I would love to talk to somebody that is from another country that smokes this cigar and tries to describe what they kind of taste.
I had never thought about that before, but yes. I would love to hear. I mean, the problem is there aren't a lot of like cigar aficionados in, I don't know. There aren't a lot of people in India who eat curry all the time who are reviewing cigars and giving tasting notes. But you're right. Like it all comes from your experience. And somebody who most of their experiences are vastly different than ours would come up with completely different tasting notes. And I would be very interested to.
I'd love to
hear that.
Yeah.
That's just a very interesting thought to me. And I'm trying to keep up with your comments, guys. Every time somebody comments, Facebook is notifying me, but it is not showing me. So Chico Ray says, "What's going on, fellas?" Thanks for watching, Chico.
What's up, Chico?
We appreciate you. And Jeremy Miller says, "Welcome back, Dennis."
Nice, thanks, man. It's good to be back.
Good to have you back, man. I missed being on the internet with you.
You know, we talk about this a lot. You know, whatever else is going on at like our jobs, at home, kids, families, all that stuff. It's nice to be able to sit down in the middle of the week, drink a little bit, talk about it, smoke something. It forces you to just relax, and I think that's what it's all about.
I agree. It's very therapeutic. Having like a commitment to drink and smoke a cigar is nice. If you can do that, if you can like carve out time, like so actually when I used to watch the show, my deal was like, all right, at 5 o'clock I get off work and I go straight to watching Sharing Our Pairings and I smoke a cigar and I have a drink. And that was it with my wife. Like we had a deal that every week, as soon as I finished work, I would go relax, smoke a cigar. I highly recommend that, even if you're not watching us, even if it's on like, I don't know, a different day. I highly recommend just setting a time where it's like, at this time you have to fit a cigar in. So no matter what's going on, you have to fit it in.
Take some time for yourself. Do a selfie date. Why not?
I'm not even going to comment on that.
Dude, I just pulled off this band and it's really nice. I mean, it feels great. Which sounds weird to say, right, about a piece of paper, but I think they did a really nice job producing the band. The colors are really nice. The embossing, I guess it's embossing in English, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm bad with these English words. But it's really nice. It's very pretty. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Probably not.
It's almost there. There we go. Now it focused.
It's really nice.
Yeah,
it's thick and heavy.
That's a really interesting thing about Fuente is like every couple years they kind of start updating their bands, and every time they get more intricate and nicer looking.
Yes. And more complicated to follow.
Yeah, and more complicated. But actually, I mean, there are some of them that are getting easier to follow, like the we haven't smoked it yet. I think we've still got it. So for a little background, we got these from Pro Cigar 2018. It was in one of the kits. So one of the things they had in those kits, which I had never seen before, I don't think we smoked it yet, did we? There was no, maybe we did smoke it. I don't remember. There was I'm trying to remember what the Vitola was. I think it was an 898 or something like that, but it was the Rosado version. Do you remember if we already did a show on that? I don't remember.
I don't think we did.
But
I don't think so.
But there was a Rosado version, and so as everybody probably knows, the three core lines of like the Chateau. It was one of the Chateaus. I think it was a double Chateau, but it might have been an 898. So the three core lines of the Chateau and 898 series are the Natural, Maduro, and Sun-Grown. The Sun-Grown has a black line along the bottom of the band. The Natural and the Maduro both have a green line along the bottom of the band. And of course, you can very obviously tell those apart just by the color of the wrapper. So again, we have no information on this, so we don't know if this is like a new release that's coming or if it's like a thing they randomly did. But the one that we had a white line to indicate that it's Rosado, because in the Magnum series, they all had a white line for Rosado. But I think that's a good indicator. Otherwise, their bands are almost impossible to decipher.
Yeah.
Other than that one specific instance. And Gerard Shelley says the reason he got into cigars was to force him to just stop and enjoy as therapy.
Okay.
And I completely agree with that. Like, I don't think I've ever said it on the show, but for me, a cigar makes a bad day better, or a bad day good and a great day better. Like, you can use it to celebrate something, or you can use it to make your day a little better. And either way, it works. Chico Ray wants to know our thoughts on Diplomatico rum. Have you ever had Diplomatico rum?
I have, but I think it's been so long that I don't remember.
There was a party at IPCPR last year, actually, where they had a couple of Diplomatico rum representatives there, and they had like 3 or 4 different versions of it. I was very impressed with it. I haven't bought any yet, but I was really impressed with that rum. I really liked it. I don't recall off the top of my head which one was my favorite, because that was a long night at IPCPR.
I think IPCPR is one long night, isn't it?
It really is. You haven't even been yet, man.
I've heard so many stories.
It is one long night. So I'm going to pull out my last pairing here, which is an old friend of the show that's kind of running a little low. I got to pick up another bottle, but somebody may have talked me into getting the upgrade.
Oh, yes.
This is Laphroaig 10. So people have been telling me to get the Laphroaig L'Or, which is about double the price of this, almost triple the price of this. And I've heard nothing but good things about the L'Or. It's like a no-age statement version that's supposed to be more intense version of Laphroaig. So since I've featured Laphroaig a couple times, I decided to dig a little deeper into their history so that I could talk about some fun facts and some just interesting things about them. So they were founded in 1815 by Donald and Alexander Johnston, who were brothers, and they stayed in the family until 1954. So during the closure, this is a weird thing about my facts, is there was a weird order to them. So they opened the distillery in 1815. They mostly sold their whiskey for blends. Back then, blends was the thing. Like, you would go to the distillery. If you were local, you would just drink their stuff. If you weren't, you would go to the grocery store and they would blend you a whiskey, which, as we've talked about before, that's how Johnny Walker got into business. They basically started that. So during World War II, the Laphroaig distillery, like most distilleries, I don't know if there's any distilleries that were open during World War II, like throughout. But during World War II, the Laphroaig distillery was actually used to store ammunition. During the war, they stored over 400 tons of ammunition.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of bullets, guys.
Significant. Yep.
And it was kept in the family. They passed it down from family member to family member until 1954 when Sandy Johnston died. He had no children, and he actually, I feel like this had to have been kind of a surprise. He left the majority ownership of the distillery to the general manager, Bessie Williamson. So she was suddenly the owner of Laphroaig after having been the manager of the distillery for a few years. And a really interesting thing about her, she is the first woman in Scotland to run a distillery, to be the manager. And after Sandy's death, when he passed it on to her, she started focusing on single malts. Until then, they were mostly selling to blends or blenders, and then some of what they did was a little bit of single malts. She was like one of the first people in the Scotch industry to start pushing single malts, and she's kind of credited with being one of the pioneers of single malts and popularizing single malts on like a global scale, which is really cool. But Laphroaig it's my favorite distillery personally. It just hits my palate just right. They make 2.6 million liters per year, which is just under 700,000 Freedom gallons. So they're big, but not enormous like some of the others.
It's still a lot of Freedom.
Yeah. And I do want to mention, check out what I got.
What is that?
Oh, that's a watch glass. So it's interesting. So I ordered another set of Glencairns because they were on sale on Amazon. And I thought I've always wanted a set of watch glasses to go with them. So I just found like some scientific, like they're used as like petri dish kind of things. Like
phenomenal.
Something on it. But they're used to kind of hold the scent in. So you can kind of let your whiskey sit there for a while, but you're not letting all those delicious smells out.
That's so pretty classy. I like that.
Take a sip when you're ready. They're a little big for the Glencairns, but they work. So I'm gonna take a couple sips of my Lefroy while I refresh Facebook and see if I can tell who's been commenting, since Facebook won't tell me. What's your next pairing, Dennis?
So,
actually, I was going to let you get into it, but then I looked at the clock. So we have to thank our final sponsor of the evening, right. Drew Estate. I picked up a pack of the regular, what do they call them? The Undercrown Maduro tins this week. Man, like I'm just on fire with those tins. I'm probably going to buy some more tomorrow. We're not actually having a show, but Jason and I are going to go to an event where Fabian's going to be. So we're going to be hanging out with Fabian a little bit. I'm hoping we can score a quick interview, so we've at least got something to post on the Facebooks. I've been thinking about it. We might do a Facebook Live thing from there, depending on what's going on. We'll see. But I'm going to take all the sips now while you talk about your final pairing.
My last pairing is a little bit of a special, unexpected gift that I got. So, many moons ago, back in 2007, I went to school for a semester in Prague, and made some friends, met some people, had a good time. And my buddy out there, we stayed in touch with each other over the years, and he actually just came to New York to visit. And he used to send me by mail some of this stuff that was homemade, but now he came by and he brought it for me. And it's really special for me. And I think probably for a lot of people in Europe, I'm sure you guys will recognize this, but it's something called Slivovice.
I do not recognize that at all.
No? And it's actually, these days, it's pretty easy to find. I guess this particular bottle you can find in most big cities in the U.S. But effectively, it's a 3-year aged, or this one is at least, it's a 3-year aged plum brandy. Brandy very loosely because it's like 45% alcohol, but it's the staple, man. It is the thing. If you are there, if you're in Czech Republic, Bratislava, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Slovenia, all these countries have a variation of this, which is essentially, all of them do fruit brandies, but this one in particular is a distilled plum brandy. And, when I was in Prague, I drank a ton of it. As you do, of course. A lot of homemade stuff. For those of you that know a little bit of your geography, this is made out in Vizovice, which is in eastern Czech Republic. So pretty far out there, very far from Prague, probably one of the furthest points away from Prague that you can get, just for reference. And they've been around for a while, a really, really long time. Like something like this was made back in the 15th century. They haven't confirmed, but they say 15th, 16th century is when plums started to be distilled into liquor. So this has been a staple for a lot of people, culturally speaking. It's been around for a long time. And these guys, this particular brand, has been around for a long time as well, 1894. And they've been making tons of this stuff. But they do it very differently than most people. And this is kind of a cool thing. There's an entire culture based around Slivovice in each of these countries. So Hungary has their own thing, Czech Republic has their own thing. But even when you go into the Czech Republic, it's such a big deal there that they have festivals. And small towns will have a festival, and every family that distills their own will bring their own bottle. They actually bring about three bottles each, and it's open for tasting for the whole town. In my buddy's town, he said they get something like just over 100 different variations of this homemade stuff. 100 families contribute, bring around tons of this stuff, and they just taste it. They sit around, they sip it, and they drink it and enjoy. But
that sounds like my kind of party.
Right? It's crazy. He told me they actually start at 11 in the morning and they go until the next day, like evening. And the only thing they do is they take short breaks, like 2-hour breaks, to go home and eat some food, and then come back out.
They don't even eat at this party. There's no food. It's just liquor that's being served.
It's just liquor, which is awesome. And everybody has their subtle variations. And these guys, for example, they actually take the pits and they keep them in the mash the entire time. Which is kind of a weird thing, but they do that to get all the tannins out of the pits. And when they age it for 3 years or 5 years, some like to do more than 5. Generally, 3 and 5 are kind of the most common. When you age it, you end up getting this really awesome, very plum-forward smell and flavor. And it obviously, aging it will make it a little more mellow.
So that is aged?
Doesn't look like much. So this is aged, yeah.
Do you know what they age it in?
They nothing fancy, unfortunately.
like steel or plastic or just whatever they have.
Yeah, they're doing steel. Most people at home will do plastic, but generally they'll do like food grade buckets. Because the particular town where my friend is from is in Moravia, and it's a big wine town, so everybody makes wine as well. And you know, it's for what it is. A lot of people, this is like the tequila of Europe, in my opinion. People are very divided. Some people really love it, and some people just totally hate it. You know,
really.
And I've had some homemade stuff that was, you know, maybe 65-70% alcohol, and it smelled like paint thinner, and it tasted like paint thinner. It would taste probably like, I've never tasted it, but just wicked stuff, man. But these guys, they make a really well-rounded product, and I was really pleasantly surprised when he brought it for me.
That's very interesting to me.
Distilled plums, it's such a weird thing too when you think about it. Plum brandies are very common. I mean, fruit brandies are really common in a lot of different countries, but particularly plums is not as common.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard of a plum brandy before. So Bob Langmaid says, speaking of brandy, he scored a small sample of 75-year-old cognac on Instagram. If you don't know Bob, he's an awesome guy, but he wins everything. He enters a lot of contests. That's what he's known for around here. And he even wins a lot around here. He's afraid to drink it because it's only one sample and he's never had 75-year-old cognac. I don't even like cognac that much, but I would try that.
You got to open it.
Please let us know what you think, because that's very relevant to my interests. I mean, I guess anybody who's watching this show is kind of the same. I like living vicariously through others when it comes to stuff like that. When it's something that I know I'll never be able to taste, but I can at least hear from somebody what it tastes like, it makes a big difference for me. So the Laphroaig for me, I had a feeling. Laphroaig is kind of one of the more moderately peated whiskeys from Islay. But in this case, I think it's too strong for the cigar. I tried to go middle of the road for most of the stuff, but I wanted to kind of see how peat worked with it. And I don't think peat works very well. I feel like peat covers up a lot of the more nuanced flavors of the cigar, which is kind of, in most cases, that's the story with peat. There are cigars that can hold up to it pretty well, but this is, in my opinion, not one of them. I think this goes better with if I had something like a Speyside Scotch or a Highland Scotch, I think this would work better. Interesting.
I actually have a kind of similar feeling about my last pairing as well. I like it on its own. I think it's great. With the cigar, unfortunately, it overpowers it.
Yeah. What's the ABV on that stuff?
45,
Okay.
45%.
I figured it. I've had some Eastern Bloc liquor before.
Well, his mom's homemade stuff is about 65.
So I used to drink. So when I was younger, I think I was around 22 or 23 or so. I don't even know how I found it. I think I was just curious and I started like Googling. But I found this guy in Germany who sells absinthe from all over the world. And this was like, now you can just buy absinthe at a liquor store, but back then you couldn't. And I was just really curious about it. I ended up getting some Czech absinthe.
Oh, God.
That was
gasoline?
I'm trying to remember the number. I believe it was 89.5%.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those in Prague.
So it was like, what is that? It was like 179 proof, which is insane.
It's wild.
It was like impossible to drink. And it was like that was, to me, it was like the reason absinthe was illegal for a long time is not because it made you hallucinate. It's because you had one glass and you were wasted.
Yeah.
Man, it was just some intense stuff. But that's what I think of every time I think of like any like Eastern Bloc kind of.
Oh, it's all super high proof. Super
exactly.
high proof stuff.
I need to go back through my pairings, but I'm trying not to. I talked too much and my cigar almost went out, so now I'm like trying to nurse it back to health. So I think I got to give it a quick relight here.
I'm trying to figure out what the flavors in the last third are, because they have. I mean, obviously they're still there, but they've changed very noticeably.
To me, there's a little bit of leather and a little bit of like oak, but not toasted oak like you would normally think. Like if you chewed on a piece of oak, like that kind of woodiness.
Okay.
And Evan Kirshner wants to know if we get the reference "Kiss the Green Fairy." I know that's what people call it when you do absinthe, but
it was in a movie.
Was it?
I can't.
Oh, there was some movie. Was it Euro Trip? Where they were in a bar and there was like an actual.
Yeah. There was a green fairy. Yes, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, trying to think of how to describe it. So, flavors for me. So, a lot of flavors can be compared to sound for me, like high pitches and low pitches. High pitches are like spice and sweetness and citrus, or at least most kinds of sweetness. So this just got a lot more low pitched. Like those more subtle flavors that kind of hit you on the center of the tongue rather than on the tip or the sides.
Yeah.
And yeah, all that I can think of is wood and leather.
I definitely get the leather. I think for me, I'm getting more of a nutmeg type flavor out of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's like nutmeg on the sides of the tongue for me.
And I'm also drinking this. The first pairing I had, the really malty one. So I think that may also be playing into some of the flavors from the cigar.
Yeah, I'm going back through my pairings. I'm getting ready to taste the debonair rum here.
I like the taper. I'm going to say I really, really like the taper, especially for me. A lot of times I'll smoke the cigar. If I really like it, I'll smoke it all the way down as much as I can.
I think that's a really cool thing about a cigar that's got this much taper. I mean, I'm like entering the first third or the final third, basically, and it's all taper from here on out.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing about this size is it mixes. It's like a box press pyramid. Did you ever have? I haven't seen them in years. I don't know if they're still around. Did you ever have the old U.S. market Monte Cristo number 2s? They weren't like a regular torpedo. It was like
I think I have actually, yeah.
maybe a 5 3/4 inch, 6-inch cigar.
They were a little
And
funky.
the first 2 inches were like a straight Parejo, straight sides, and then it had like this really long.
Yep.
Like I just lost the word, taper. Right before it like actually goes into a bellicoso kind of tip. But it had like, in cigar terms, you would call it the shoulder. So like the shoulder was like 3/4 of the cigar almost. And this kind of has that, where almost half the cigar is like shoulder. And then it finally turns into like an actual regular torpedo up there. But I mean, like you can see, it's like, you would think this was a trumpet cigar if you just saw this part.
Oh, definitely. Mine is getting there, for sure.
But yeah, I think the Shark is a really cool size because of that. I don't think anybody else has really even tried to make like a. Well, I guess Quesada did a couple weird things, but most companies don't have something that's got this kind of longevity in the market.
Yeah.
It goes from box press to round, and it's just cool that like you can see and feel where the transition happens, and it's a really slow transition. I think it's just a cool size.
And I think the blend really fits the size very well. I suspect probably if the blend was in a different size or a single type of size, it may not be the same. I mean, definitely wouldn't be the same, but it may not be as good. And I think the size allows for a lot of those flavors to develop and sustain throughout the cigar.
Well, and I'm interested to see what happens as we get like really into the taper, because I'm kind of, like I said, I'm just hitting the taper now. I'm interested to see if the cigar ramps up or ramps down at that point, depending on how the fillers happen, because obviously they have to the leaf placement in this size, in this vitola, is very important because of the shape that it ends up being after the box press. And it's interesting that the debonair rum doesn't taste as sweet as it did before. I think that's probably the cigar sweetness ramping up, and then it's kind of covering up some of the sweetness from the rum. Let me see if I'm curious if I'll get more of that flavor that I can't identify, and maybe I'll be able to identify some of it.
I think I'm pretty set on my my pairing of the night.
It reminds me of buttered popcorn.
Buttered
popcorn? Makes me think of buttered popcorn. Like, it's very subtle and it's very sweet for what it is, but it that funk that I can't put my finger on reminds me a little bit of buttered popcorn.
In beer terms, I guess, would that be? I think that's is that diacetyl?
I have no idea.
Right, I think that's what it is. That like fake butter flavor that they add to some of the popcorns. I think that's what it is.
Could be.
Man, this Libavita, it smells like melons and lychee. It smells great.
Sounds very Japanese.
But
my pairing of the night is going to have to be the debonair rum. I mean, the sweetness gets covered up a little bit in this last third that we're hitting, but I think that in at least the first 2/3, it does a really good job of complementing the cigar, and you still get a lot of flavor from the rum and a lot of flavor from the cigar. In the final third, I'm not sure what would pair best with it yet. I'm still figuring out this last third, man. There's a big transition in the last.
There's a lot, absolutely. There's a lot going on, and of course, a lot of that flavor is also concentrating into the taper as the tobacco's heating up.
Yeah, of course. What would you call the body of this cigar? How would you classify it? I'm just curious. We don't normally talk about the
Yeah.
strength levels or bodies, but
I would give it a reasonable medium
I think it
compared to
started off as
what I
medium.
smoke.
I think it starts off like as a solid middle of the road medium and then ramps its way up to full.
Hmm. I could definitely see it getting more full. For me, I'm getting a lot of the leather, and now chocolate is coming out. I don't know if you're getting that as well.
I could see that. I don't really get chocolate, but I could see how it could be interpreted as chocolate.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is an interesting cigar. Like
Yeah.
I'm noticing it's a lot more savory now. There's a lot less sweetness to it than I was getting before. It had a pretty pronounced sweetness, and now it's very savory and woody.
Oh yeah, the wood is definitely coming out of this. But I love that it's really changed so much from the beginning. Not expected at all, and I think obviously the size has something to do with it, the blend. But the size is really good to this blend.
Yeah. I'm starting to see how this could be a number one. It's not the cigar that I've enjoyed the most, but it's one of the more interesting cigars that I've had. It's got a lot of really distinct transitions and a lot of complexity that's really hard to pick apart.
And it smells great too.
I feel like I could smoke through a box of these and still not quite figure out all the flavor notes.
Yeah, I would say the same. I really love the room note on it. It just smells great.
Does it? Like as I've said before, I can't smell room notes. Like if I'm in my garage, if I leave the garage and come back, I can
Then
smell
you can
the
smell,
room note. When I'm inside of the room note, I have no gauge for it whatsoever. I don't know why.
It's very, for me, it's I mean, this would be a killer winter cigar for me. Just
Really?
because of the room note.
Wow. Oh, because you could smoke it inside.
Yeah, I'll smoke it inside.
And the lady wouldn't get too mad, and you wouldn't feel gross when you come in the room the next day.
Yeah, not too mad, but definitely that's a really good point. Some cigars are phenomenal, but after you smoke them, you come back into the room and it's a little bit intense. And other cigars are very subtle, and they leave this killer room note where it just smells nice, kind of nutty, kind of bready.
I could see that. All right. Any other closing notes before we true it up here?
Yeah, I think for me tonight, best pairing of the night was this Cardin Delight. Just awesome. I think just really well balanced and doesn't take away from the cigar at all.
I gotta try that one.
Oh, you will. Oh, you will try a lot of it.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you to all of our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners. We appreciate you guys out there doing things we are not built to do, and protecting our freedoms. And we can't thank you enough for that. We hope you get some rack time. We hope this was a little escape for you to to think about what's going on back home and think about the people who are thinking of you. Everybody else, thank you again for watching or listening. We'll only have one episode this week. We might have kind of a mini episode tomorrow that's like 5-10 minutes, depending on what we do, but we'll see about that. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a great night.